After walking into the shelter, this woman made an unusual request. Although it was one that the workers had never heard of before, what happened next was the most surprising thing of all. Dogs are popular pets all across the world, and yet dog homelessness has risen over the last decades. There are a wide range of canines living in various shelters, and they all have stories that are worth hearing out. In this video, we will be looking at what took place in a small adoption center in North Carolina. Asheville Humane Society was a shelter that provided a temporary home for stray or abandoned dogs in North Carolina. One of the dogs, a female called Sam, was unfortunately labeled a problem dog. The center had only been caring for Sam for 6 months, but it had been a tough time. There were several reasons as to why she had been taken in by the shelter and why it was a challenge to get people who were looking to adopt a dog to take the dog in. One of the most obvious reasons was her appearance. Although Sam was a well-liked breed, she suffered from a skin condition. Sam's skin allergy was a chronic issue. Not only did it negatively impact the sight of her, with clumps of her fur missing and masses on her skin, but the condition also required ongoing treatment. This made her a high-maintenance animal to care for. Even though people who are considering adoption understand that animals in a shelter come with some past traumas or personality difficulties, they will often go for the easiest ones to manage. A family had previously taken Sam in, but it didn't end with the dog finding her forever home. The couple were fully informed about Sam's skin condition, but they didn't seem to have any problem with fulfilling her needs. After the adoption papers were signed, Sam was immediately taken to the couple's house, excited to meet her new family. However, she didn't last long with them. It turned out that the family already owned another dog, and a rivalry started between that dog and Sam. Another one of Sam's most notable issues was her social hostility, particularly with other dogs. Although she was sweet-natured towards humans, she had always struggled to get along with her own species. There were a few exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, it was unlikely that Sam and another dog would become friends. When Sam was surrendered to the Asheville Humane Society, the workers were devastated to see the dog's disappointment. It was already hard to convince people to see past Sam's specialized diet and skin condition, but the possibility of her not getting along with existing pets reduced her likelihood of getting adopted. The 7-year-old dog wanted nothing more than to find the right people who would love her no matter what. Sam continued to hope for this. Meanwhile, sitting inside the office of one of the shelter's workers was a 13-year-old male dog called Brutus. The dog had been given the space to relax because he suffered from separation anxiety. This anxiety made it difficult for the animal to be left alone, since doing so would cause emotional distress. The staff tried their best to accommodate his needs, and there was one particular worker who chose to accompany him at all times. It was easier to have him in her office than in the kennels. Brutus's story was similar to Sam's in many ways. They both suffered from medical conditions and were both struggling to get adopted. However, Sam had not been at the adoption center for very long and was still quite young. On the other hand, Brutus was the oldest dog at the shelter. A heartbreaking fact was that the dog was heading towards being put down. The canine had a long history of shuffling around foster homes. Ever since he was little, people would take him in only to find his needs too demanding. Although several people would consider a dog's loyalty to be their most charming trait, they don't always repay the kindness. And Brutus constantly required someone to be with him, which was a lot to ask for. Sometimes people need to go to work or pick up some groceries, and dogs aren't always allowed in certain public spaces. That is why, time and again, Brutus would return to the shelter, his foster experience being another failure. Months passed, and in that period of time, Leslie Sachs and her daughter Sienna went through a difficult loss. They grieved over their family dog, and Sienna wanted nothing more than to take in another pet so that they could fill the hole left in their lives. That is why Leslie turned towards Asheville Humane Society, which was their local dog shelter. Leslie had been to the shelter before. During this visit, she met Sam and learned about what the poor dog had suffered through. After hearing her story and meeting her briefly, Leslie was overwhelmed with pity for the animal. Initially, Leslie wasn't sure if she was fully prepared to take in another dog at the time, so she left the shelter, promising to return when she was ready. On the day that Leslie came back to Asheville with the intention of adopting, she bumped into Brutus, who was being walked around by one of the staff. Leslie was immediately smitten with the old canine, who still had a lot of energy despite his age and medical conditions. After petting him lightly, Leslie walked up to the reception desk and she asked the shelter for the oldest, most overlooked dog. The workers were delighted to hear such a request. It wasn't often that people asked for the most unadoptable dogs, but it was something that the staff at Asheville appreciated every time that it happened. Without wasting any time, they introduced Leslie to Brutus formally. Leslie was happy to see the dog again, and he left her with a positive impression. Brutus was so happy to find out that Leslie wanted to take him in that he couldn't control the wagging of his tail. The staff were required to tell Leslie all about Brutus's history and any medical conditions he might have. It turned out that the old dog had a few chronic issues and would require constant aid, alongside having to be around him all the time. Leslie only found Brutus's need for constant companionship to be a good thing, since it showed how much the dog needed to be loved, as well as his desire to give love to others. As excited as Leslie was to bring Brutus home, she still felt as if there was some unfinished business that she needed to resolve. She asked to see Sam again, curious about how the dog was doing. The workers were shocked to hear that Leslie remembered Sam. They immediately brought the dog out, who was eager to see Leslie again. Leslie knelt down and stroked Sam's fur, not minding the patches of her rough skin texture. Leslie thought the canine was beautiful regardless. Leslie thought long and hard about what to do. She had a big 3-story house with several rooms. Her family was incredibly supportive, so even if she wasn't able to attend to her pet's requirements, there would be someone else who could step in and help. She looked back down at the dogs' beaming faces. She didn't have the heart to leave either of them behind, but she had only come to the shelter to pick up one dog. The staff watched Leslie as she petted both of the dogs. She had to make a difficult decision. Whether Leslie picked Sam or Brutus, the workers were glad that one of their unadoptable dogs was being given the chance for a better life. It was more than they could have asked for. Finally, after several minutes of thinking, Leslie came to a decision. She walked back up to the counter, and then the workers were left speechless when she did this. She asked to adopt both Brutus and Sam. Picking between them was impossible because she had already formed a special connection with both of them. The staff recalled the day as being one of their best. They had never heard of someone asking for 2 overlooked dogs at the same time. It was an emotional experience for everyone involved. When Leslie walked back to the car, the dogs at each of her sides, Sienna saw her mother cry for the first time. Leslie was so happy with her decision, she couldn't contain her excitement. From that day forward, Brutus and Sam would live happily in their forever homes. What did you like most about this story? Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, subscribe to the channel and make sure to turn the bell on so you'll be notified when we upload. I hope to see you in another video. Take care.